This sermon is part 5 in a 9-part series on living our UU values and covenant, which can be found on the last page of your order of service. It's no problem for today's sermon if you missed any of the earlier installments, but if you want to catch up, all of the earlier installments are available in our online sermon archive. We'll continue to revisit this sermon once a month this congregational year to learn more about these new UU values and covenant that were adopted this past summer at UU General Assembly, which we often abbreviate as GA. Also, as your monthly reminder, where is GA this summer? Baltimore, that's right. It'll be Wednesday through Sunday, June 18 to 22nd. So who's planning to attend? All right, so I see some hands out there. I strongly encourage you to consider going even just for a few hours. Go one day, go multiple days if you can, especially if you've never been to a GA before. It's fascinating to be in a room with thousands of other UUs, sometimes like 5,000 come to GA, and it's also really a crash course in learning more about the larger UU movement. Returning to our UU values and covenant, this month we are focusing on the value of transformation, which says, quote, "We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete, never perfect." Let's briefly reflect on each of those sentences in turn. First, we adapt to a changing world. As a meditation teacher, this reference to a changing world reminds me of that central Buddhist concept of impermanence. That reality is in a constant state of flux and flow and change. As some of you heard me say, it is process and relationship all the way down. According to Buddhism, one major source of suffering that we create for ourselves, suffering that we opt into, even though it's optional, are our futile attempts to try to stop impermanent things from changing. We try to grasp onto them and we create suffering. To give you one relevant example of what does that statement mean in practice, that we create suffering for ourselves, here's one example from our current experience here in Frederick. There's an old saying that if you choose not to find joy in the snow, you will have less joy in your life and the same amount of snow. That's how reality is the same. How do we respond to it? Many people, however, misunderstand this Buddhist teaching and think that Buddhism is telling us to be passive and just accept the world as it is, even with all its injustices. In contrast, Buddhism, rightly understood, calls us to directly face the change and impermanence of reality, whatever it is, whether it's pleasant, whether it's unpleasant, whether it's neutral, and all of that is continuing to change, and then respond to that changing nature of reality as skillfully, as wisely, as generously, as compassionately as we can. The mindfulness teacher Jon Kabat-Zinn puts it this way: you cannot stop the waves of change, but you can learn to surf. This dedication to adapt to the changing world is also deeply connected to what we mean when we describe Unitarian Universalism as a theologically liberal religious tradition. Whereas conservative religious traditions tend to align themselves with William F. Buckley's call to stand athwart history yelling stop. We theological liberals seek to change in light of new scientific discoveries and other new sources of insight and wisdom. This historical commitment of our UU movement to grow and evolve is underscored in that third sentence of our new UU transformation value, which reads, "Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages." And even though Scarlett loves change, and that's good, a lot of us have loss aversion in related to change, right? A lot of times change can be scary. Speaking of scary things and of history being made, I can't talk about transformation this morning without naming the elephant in the room, the transformation that is coming to our country. We are 8 days away from the second presidential inauguration of Donald Trump. In 2016, when he was first elected, we launched a book study here at UCF called Readings for Resistance and Resilience. And two of the books we read, we started in the summer, and people described it as like the most depressing beach reads ever. Still really important to do. But two of the books we read were Octavia Butler's prescient novels, Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. How many of you have read them? Okay, quite a few hands. Both books were published in the 1990s, almost 30 years ago, but predict events coming true right now. I'll give you three startling examples that are a kind of preview into why she's really always was worth revisiting, and particularly is worth revisiting now. First, one of the main characters is a populist authoritarian zealot who becomes president of the United States using the campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again." I promise you Donald Trump has not read Octavia Butler. But second, the dystopian timeline that runs through the novels starts in the year 2024. Third, the novel begins in a fictional town in Southern California that is 20 miles from Los Angeles, and wildfires in the area, like those happening in LA right now, is a major theme at the beginning of the book. For more details, my 2017 sermon titled Orwell, Atwood, Butler, Readings for Resistance and Resilience, again, is available in our sermon archive. There are many ways that these novels and Butler's books more generally can inform and inspire our resistance and resilience in such a time as this. For now, I'm going to highlight just one recurring quote that directly relates to our call to adapt to a changing world. All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. It is process and relationship all the way down. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. I think the Buddha might agree with Butler. That quote, part of Butler's earth seed theology, says so much about our call to respond to the changing nature of reality as skillfully, as wisely, as compassionately and generously as we can. We are all in this together as part of the interdependent web of all existence. Along these lines, the second sentence of our UU value of transformation says that we covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. I appreciate that related emphasis here to change collectively. In our American culture, we have this emphasis on rugged individualism, trying to convince us to put everything on our own shoulders, unless, of course, you're a bank that's too big to fail, and then we're good with socialism. While we each need to do all we can, of course, many of the world's problems can only be solved at the levels of systems and structures and institutions. As you've heard me quote before from the climate justice movement, if you are feeling overwhelmed as one person, stop being one person. Join a group that is working for change. We are stronger together, and working together in coalition for collective liberation is the only way to turn our dreams into deeds and to build the better world we dream about. That being said, I also appreciate the caution in that final part of our transformation value, which is honest that even though we can and should make improvements to the greatest extent possible for the benefit of all sentient beings, ultimately our work for justice is never complete and never perfect. As you've heard me quote before from one of my colleagues, I promise you this: you are saved from perfection. That can be a liberating starting point, though. If we know from the beginning that we're going to be imperfect, then when we do inevitably mess up from time to time, we can be quicker to admit our mistakes. And as Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. Let's go deeper into our UU value of transformation with two insights from the book, What It Takes to Heal, How Transforming Ourselves Can Change the World. It's by Prentice Hemphill, an embodiment facilitator, political organizer, and therapist. In particular, I want to share some of what they write about the importance of vision and action. That's like 2 of the 10 things they talk about. So check out this book if you're interested in more. First, vision. If you hang out long enough in activist circles, you will eventually hear this slogan: another world is possible. Let's go, these words invite us to imagine what might be and to remember that the way things are is neither the way they have always been or the way they have to be. At the moment, too many of our fellow citizens are caught up in this toxic thrall to nostalgia of make America great again, right? And it's all a big lie. But we can and must envision a better way forward for all. At the same time, I want us to be honest that we are entering into a hard chapter in our nation's history. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., this is his final book written just before his assassination. The title famously asks this question: where do we go from here? Chaos or community? Beloved community. At the moment, too many of we the people have chosen chaos. That's a hard truth that we have to face. But I also find encouragement in our UU value of transformation. A change is gonna come. I promise you this too. This too will pass. And I find some solace in these words from the civil rights activist and lawyer Valerie Kaur. She shared this first a few weeks before Trump's first inauguration, and her reflection is very much worth revisiting in the wake of Trump's, as we anticipate Trump's second inauguration. She tells the whole story, and it spans on her vision in her book, See No Stranger, a memoir and manifesto of revolutionary love. In her words, "The future is dark. But what if this darkness is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? What if our America is not dead, but a country that is waiting to be born? What if the story of America is one long labor? What if our grandfathers and grandmothers are standing behind us now, those who survived occupation and genocide, enslavement and Jim Crow, detention and political assault? What if they are whispering in your ear, you are brave enough. You've got this. You can do this. What if our nation's greatest transition is before us? And in such times, what does the midwife tell us to do? She says, breathe and push. Getting through the next year, it's going to require a lot of deep breaths. Breathe with me now. In and out. See, even with that, if you feel a little shift somatically in your body, it's going to require a lot of looking for ways that we individually and collectively can push for transformation within our respective spheres of influence. So that's a little about vision, and I'll move toward my conclusion with 3 ways we can discern actions we might be uniquely able to make. 1, to make a difference, our actions have to have teeth. They have to be more than performative. The incoming powers that be have shown us repeatedly they are unashamed of their cruelty and they are unapologetic in their hypocrisy. Trying to shame them or point out their hypocrisy, Jon Stewart's really good at it, and Trump doesn't care because he's watching Fox News anyway. That it just has no chance of being effective if it doesn't have teeth. So what does work? Timothy Snyder, a history professor at Yale University and author of the book On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century, this is a quite short, powerful book, warns that the first commandment of resisting authoritarianism is do not obey in advance. At the moment, we're seeing too much of just that. I'll give you just 2 prominent examples many of you are probably aware of. First, Disney, the parent company of ABC News, agreed to pay $15 million towards Trump's presidential library. I don't have time to talk about that, to settle a defamation lawsuit about an anchor's on-air comments. This swift settlement, they didn't even think about it, they just basically very quickly agreed to $15 million, has been widely criticized as Disney bowing to pressure from Trump and setting a terrible precedent of failing to defend First Amendment protections for the press. Second, Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, announced it would discontinue its third-party fact-checking program. The unspoken truth is they don't want the responsibility of fact-checking Trump, who is a world-class, decades-long, record of lying. The Washington Post documented more than 30,000 false or misleading claims just during his first presidential term, an average of 21 lies per day. I bring up these examples because at the moment, the tide is tipping in Trump's favor. But being president, it's actually one of the world's hardest jobs. As his administration begins to take actions, the tide will very likely begin to turn in unpredictable ways and get a lot choppier. When it does, one good manual on how to interrupt the powers that be with teeth, with methods of nonviolent direct action like King and Gandhi and others have done, is found in this book, Fighting Tyranny from Dictatorship to Democracy and the Anti-Coup by the late American political scientist Gene Sharp. This book is co-authored with one of his students. For a quick free summary, use your favorite search engine to look up 198 methods of nonviolent action by Gene Sharp, and it'll come right up. And that's a quick book that then the quick list that this book then goes into details. In the coming months, we'll also be hearing about ways to get involved from various national UU groups, as well as our own UUCF Democracy Action Team. Save the date for their first organizational meeting, which will be Sunday, January 26th during the 10:30 middle hour between the two Sunday services in room 113, just off the art gallery. So that's number one. Our actions must have teeth. They must be more than performative to be impactful. Second, as you discern how you specifically are empowered and feel called to act, keep in mind Carl Jung's idea of the golden shadow. Many of us are familiar with Jung's general concept of the shadow, which is often described as being about negative or socially unacceptable traits that we repress and then come out in weird ways in our life. But that's only half of the story about the shadow. We all also have a golden shadow that is about your positive, untapped gifts, talents, and potentials. You can learn to recognize your golden shadow when you find yourself admiring or idealizing another person far beyond who that person actually is. Your projection onto them is about qualities that you have disowned in yourself. And once you recognize that projection, it can serve as a mirror. Looking at that person could be a mirror that is calling you to tap into your own unrealized potential. More specifically, ask yourself, who do I intensely admire, especially for helping make the world a better place? What qualities do you see in them that you wish you possessed? And then recognize that those traits that you hyperbolically admire in others, that actually exists within you as various forms of dormant potential. Learning to recognize your golden shadow can help you manifest parts of yourself that the world desperately needs in the coming days. Third, along those lines, I recommend the short and practical book, Social Change Now, a guide for reflection and connection by Deepa Iyer. It invites you to explore which of 9 archetypes for justice work are you most personally aligned with. Not all of us are called to be frontline responders or visionaries or experimenters. Some of us are better suited to be builders or weavers or healers. Others of us have gifts to be disputers, interrupters. Still others of us have a natural proclivity toward being caregivers or storytellers. Which of these 9 archetypes do you most identify with? And which do you not identify with? Maybe you can let yourself off the hook a little for things you're not called to do. Here's a quick story of the difference this sort of discernment can make. I once had someone confess to me, I have a hard time admitting this, but I hate working at soup kitchens. And I feel guilty every time the announcement is made, and I feel like I should be doing it. You know that whole stop shooting on yourself? We do that a lot. The few times they did sign up, they ended up watching the clock the whole time and wishing for time to pass faster. So I said, well, what do you enjoy doing? They said, especially things that other people don't. They said, actually, I don't mind asking people for money. You know, I'm a pretty good fundraiser. So I said, well, instead of signing up to serve soup, why don't you ask the soup kitchen if they're okay with you fundraising for them? And that person did raise thousands of dollars for that soup kitchen, which they were probably more grateful for than just one more person volunteering, which is also important. The takeaway here is not to stop signing up for the soup kitchen. In Ayer's archetypes, this person, though, was more of a builder than a caregiver. As the author and theologian Frederick wrote, you are called to that place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. Where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. That's what the world needs from you in such a time as this, and every time. For now, I'll conclude by inviting you to hear a new poem written for this moment. It was written only 3 days ago by my colleague, the Reverend Nancy MacDonald Ladd. She writes, I'm just over here making soup while the world is burning. And I can't even find the can opener or the garlic mincer, much less the tools of the master or the two-state solution or comeuppance for the mad king and his fawning minions. I can't find life, liberty, or the pursuit of happiness, which comes after the other two and is so far removed from those fighting for the aforementioned life and liberty as to be a sort of dream of imagining. I also can't stop the fires or even clear the traffic. And so what am I doing? I'm making soup and carrying on, though I'm making no promises just yet about the keeping calm part. I'm over here making soup. And wait, there's the can opener. It's by the spoons to stir the pot. And I'm writing words, and I'm beginning again while the world is burning. So as we prepare to push in the ways we uniquely can, remember to take some deep breaths. In and out. As we work together to repair the world, also remember to take care of yourself. Make some soup, or whatever you're into. And know that you are not alone. We are on this journey of transformation together. And I'm grateful to be on that journey with all of you. Please rise in body or spirit. Let's sing together hymn 1015, I Know I Can.